Welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, of course, as always, joined by legendary Neurotoxin and Diggs. And this is episode 29, Something About Groups. So we will be, I guess, what do they call it? Dev Diary?
Yes.
Dev Diary. Dev discussion,
yes.
Which is great. They're trying to get more into, communication with their fans. That's great. But we are going to be going over that. So, and I think maybe some other forum related things that are ever present forum.
Hold on.
person.
First, though, that hippogriff.
Okay, let's just start there.
With the air running, because that's the first thing I looked at. I see the hippogriff. I see its legs all, running in the air. It's doing the, like you see the basketball players do when they make a really long leap, and you see their legs running. Or Luigi from Super Mario Brothers 2 with his legs flailing in the air. It's what the hell is going on there? If you're going to tell me it levitates, the wings are for show, and it actually imagines the terrain that it's running on, and that's what it's actually how it moves. That's hilarious and awesome, but you have to say that up front. You can't just give me that video and be like, "Oh, here's our hippogriff." It's like, what the hell is going on here?
I didn't even.
Oh yeah.
I was just. I didn't even actually catch the original post. I saw it on Twitter only because someone I follow had replied to them saying somebody needs to learn about birds.
Yeah. Well, then person posted the video of the a bird flying, and it's got everything tucked in because it wants to be aerodynamic, not have things hanging out. That makes sense. Comedy. I really, really hope they combined the running animation with the flying animation just out of humor, and they don't actually intend for it to move like that, but they intended just to make a funny video to make people comment on. If that's the case, good on you, artist. But otherwise, if that's actually how it was intended to be, come on. And it looks so weird. How did that pass?
It did.
Yeah, I guess for me, it just seems like it, in the still pictures, it seems very high up to be gliding. I mean, these are supposed to be gliding mounts, not flying mounts. And then I don't know how you get them up that high to glide in the first place. So are they going to be running them up mountainsides or jumping off somehow? We're going to walk them up stairs of the castles and jump them off what are they going to be gliding off of?
Maybe it's that they can naturally fly on their own, but when you're riding them, the best they can do is glide because you're too heavy.
I'm just saying, I just don't understand exactly how that all works. I'm guessing what we do is we run up to wherever it is and then summon them. So it doesn't matter because they aren't there with us.
I have no idea.
So
I think you just pull your mount out of your pocket.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Or
so I guess that's it. We don't have
blow
to worry
a whistle.
about having,
Play a little tune in your ocarina.
I hope they don't try to just be too different just to be different. Because
different about
just how things look, kind of what the monsters and all that. Just to, it's cool to be different, but not to where it gets weird.
It just could be that they resolve on a weird art style. Like the entire Might and Magic series had its own weird signature art style. I've gone back and reviewed, especially the 3D stuff, and they're like real weird, tubey, nerbsy looking characters, but they have their own kind of signature style, and you're gonna have a style, stick with it.
Did you have any thoughts about the different types of hippogriffs? There's the Kalar one, there's the Empyrean one.
Let me bring those back up here. Go ahead and keep on.
What's different about it? Just how they
look them up.
Because all these are skins, right? So they're only going to be appearance.
Well, it's interesting when you say that because there's slight differences in appearances, but the write-up for each one says that I think it's the Empyrean one. Is it the Empyrean one that's built for speed? One of them is supposed to be built for speed instead of strength. The other one is like for.
But they've done that with descriptions before, right? We've talked about that where they sort of describe something as though it seems like it's going to have properties when
flavor text.
When everything we've been told is that's not going to be the case. I think I was a stargazer. For some reason, that comes to mind. That would have been months ago. There was like a stargazer, and the text read as though you can, look into the sky and see blah 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 blah. But it's probably just not actually going to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Which is misleading. I mean, if it's something you're paying for.
And I would like there to be, I'm going to say significant difference, but I don't mean necessarily in strength. Just that's kind of what RPGs are about to me, is having differences. Meaning
how they look or how you interact.
Well, I'm just saying, if it says this one is for speed because of racial stuff, and this one is for something else, whatever it is, and it doesn't have to be super speed necessarily. Just
Here's my question: is are they going to have abilities that you can use while you're writing them? Is that what their difference is? Is that they have the same attributes, the same stat line, but each one has like one special ability you can use, and that what makes the difference or whatever.
No pay to win.
Can you acquire them without paying, or are they exclusively paid skins? Because if they're exclusively,
go ahead.
If they're exclusively paid skins, then you can guarantee they're not going to have any special features.
Right. I forgot whether or not they're skins or not. So let's see if we can figure that out. Did you find the pics you were looking for?
Yeah, I found a. Here it is. The dev blog. I'll just post it in chat, so everybody can look at them.
Let's see.
So I want to look at the lore of the hippogriff.
I don't know why I had the weird thought that the font looks nice. I care less about the bird.
I'll give you that. It is a nice font.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the way they use their terminology, they can say mount but mean skin.
Right.
But it comes with barding separately. So
how's that going to work?
So hopefully that means it's really a mount and not. Hippogriffs are just one example of how our animal husbandry system will allow you to create a variety of creatures. So it's a mount, not a skin. Right. And that should mean that we're also breeding abilities. So there might be some combat abilities with them as well. And maybe we could get some racial differences like speed versus, I don't know what the other thing would be, strength, if that's... Well, one says hardy and resilient, so maybe that's stamina. That's for the Warwind.
Could be health, yeah. But yeah, that they gotta fix that flying or gliding or whatever it is, because that looks hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah, so we've got the Warwind, we've got the Nighthawk, and the Winterhawk. And the Winterhawk is born to withstand frigid temperatures. So that's kind of an interesting attribute to have, and that would be really cool if temperature was part of what we had to think about in terms of protecting our mounts and keeping them healthy and viable. Different regions and biomes.
That'd start to affect how far up you can go too, right? If they're going to factor in cold. I can just see the first complaint: someone's hippogriff freezes to death.
Right.
Well, if they can, they will. Someone will, not pay attention to things. Someone will be a purist and play without the UI on. Or something. I don't know. I don't know if
That'll
you can
be
able to turn the UI off.
He'll play the most difficult way possible, whatever that is, just for the immersion. So that could be interesting. So we could have differences based on racial preferences, differences based on region, and then how we're using the animal husbandry.
Okay.
Cool. So the topic is groups. I think interesting for me is that the way this dev discussion was answered on the forums, the bulk of the answers so far are just saying they want challenge and danger, and they don't want dungeons and raids to be easy. But of course it's me, so I get into semantics.
That doesn't even answer the question.
Right. But they're basically just saying they want group.
You can have a single player dungeon that's difficult.
Yeah. Well, they're saying what is your ideal group gameplay is kind of the way it was worded, and some of them have the answer. I want my group gameplay to be challenging. But so lots of people in Neuro started with this when he responded right before we came on. He was talking about multiplayer, and it should be a single player style of gaming. But for me, the multiplayer and massively multiplayer isn't really about grouping. It's about interacting with other players or masses of other players, and that's not necessarily synonymous with grouping. There's lots of different ways that we can interact and socialize in ways that is impossible in a single player game outside of a group, which is a formal group like a party or a raid. So there's contests, decoration contests, and costume contests. I mean, like I said, we in Landmark, we did a lot of multiplayer content and interaction, but we didn't do a lot of grouping. We socialized quite a bit.
It was also an automatic grouping system, so when they finally did add enemies to go out and fight and loot, you just needed to be in proximity. You didn't even have to do anything, and you would get the loot. So
yeah,
it was such a soft grouping system that it didn't even feel like grouping.
Yeah. But, we had Layspring Academy where we would go up to one spot and teach people how to build. And that could have hundreds of people. Sometimes they're learning that stuff. And we had swap meets where people would swap out different components, tiny stuff that they had built with voxels. So there was lots of multiplayer interaction going on there. We just weren't grouping as adventurers for the most part. But then the next thing is in Ashes, there's lots of different ways that we can group. So most people seem to be focusing on dungeons and raiding. But there's actually lots of other types of groups. They're like, those people who want to solo or don't want to socialize and all this stuff, and don't design the game around soloing. And but there's all kinds of different ways that we're going to be grouping, whether it's with guilds or caravans or sieges, different types of groups that we're going to have that aren't necessarily typical of MMORPGs. But do you guys from Dungeons and Raids have a ideal type of group that you enjoy playing with?
If the difficulty of the dungeon is simple enough that you don't need to bring a special sort of party and do the dance in a special sort of way, then I'm really fine playing with anybody, especially if it's a fair looting system where somebody isn't going to, be able to take control over things at the last moment, or where loot is not being fairly distributed otherwise. If it's, any of those circumstances where loot distribution is a little bit of an issue, or you need to actually have a certain amount of coordination to complete something, then I tend to try to find people who actually have a bit of proficiency, that look like they actually know how to build their character and, seem like they've done the things they're supposed to for about where they're at in the game. So that's, if I see somebody in, giving WoW as an example, if I'm going into a level 50 zone and I see somebody's wearing a blue set of equipment that's, this beautiful, red armor all the way down top to bottom or whatever, and the accommodating sword and shield, and they've equipped themselves for aesthetics and just, struggle into the game with that, I would more likely than not play with them, because they're underpowered. They're just going to get one-shotted. I'm the healer. I'm not picking your ass up. So, to that extent, if there's enough difficulty that people actually have to be responsible for one another, then I want to play with people who are actually willing to be responsible for one another and know how to, and are, properly set up to do it. So,
and under what circumstances do you ideally group? Are you grouping to raid because you want specific armor and you're trying to help people get their armor sets? What's enticing you to form the group in the first
Sometimes place? It's just exploration. Getting from this town to the next town is going to be faster if we all, group together and run together. If something aggroes on one of us, we can all turn around and smack it down real quick and keep running. If we are harvesting a common resource, if it isn't like rare nodes that we're trying to get, but it's just there's trees, there's a forest, use axes, chop stuff down, then, I'm more than happy to go out with the group, but more of the safety in numbers. You might be able to get things done quicker. You get done with your capacity faster, but they can carry more, so it works better as a group if you all work together and kind of split it, sort of thing. That makes more sense, especially if having a group means you'll be able to have access to bigger and better resources, like bringing a wagon with you because you feel like you've got enough people to protect it. So to that extent, if it's a crafting or resource gathering group, if it's an exploration group, or you're just trying to get from point A to point B together, those are situations. Obviously, if I'm going into content that is too difficult for me to take on by myself, then I'm more likely to reach out for, maybe one or two more people and see how far we can go. And, if we can get through it with that, then great. Otherwise, maybe get some more people involved or back off from that area till I'm more ready for it. Raids, I don't know if I'm doing raids anymore. Like, that's a lot of time and effort dedicated to something that, could go catastrophically wrong at any time. If they don't do a system where there's back spawns, and a wipe is not just go back to the nearest revive point and run back to your bodies, but, it takes maybe a little bit more time to reassemble, that might be a little bit more appealing to me. Back spawns, no. Back spawns were the reason why I stopped playing a lot of games. It was, I'll give an example. And try to split the difference between being an MMO and like a action RPG. But you can't have an action RPG like that. You can't have Diablo and Torchlight with back spawns. It doesn't work like that. And so that was a short-lived game for me.
But that sounds to me like you don't have an ideal group necessarily. You just like to group.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if they're people I know, I mean, if I'm playing a game with people I know, I'm definitely going to be like, hey, yo, what you up to? You know, let's do some stuff. If the people I play with aren't necessarily on that frequently, or if it's a game where distance matters and there isn't really a fast travel system, I don't imagine that I'm going to be, you know, running back from halfway across the continent to help somebody out, knock down some, you know, low-level crap dungeon. That would make sense for the scope of pretty much all meows going forward. I expect to be a like an explorer, adventurer, cartographer, journalist, you know, that sort of person. I don't plan to stay in one place.
But if you are exploring and mapping, you don't need to have somebody who has 50th level functional gear.
No, not necessarily.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe I do.
Sounds like you don't. You don't know what the boss is going to be. You might not have the right equipment even. You might not even own the right equipment for the stuff you're running into. So it's not like
Right.
you can say ahead of time, you should have brought XXX, because that's the other thing about this game. If it's working according to design, is that it's dynamic. So it's not like we really know ahead of time necessarily how we should be prepared.
Right. I mean, it sounds like for the most part, I should just be scumming around the wilderness in level 1 and 2 nodes, like the lower tier nodes, where the difficulty of the creatures and the encounters themselves hasn't really ramped up that much. If I want to do a lot more solo work and remain safe, if I'm going to be going into the more populated and higher tier nodes, then I'm either going to want to group up or stay to the more well-traveled areas, roads, and you know, cities and that sort of stuff, and learn what I can from those. But you know, not go venturing out where things are going to go eat me if I go out solo.
Right. No, I'm just saying that the initial thing that you said is when you group, you won't necessarily pick people who seem undergeared. But if you're just exploring, that's not necessarily.
Well, again, that always came with the stipulation is if it's something where the content requires people to actually be responsible for one another to be able to succeed. And so if I'm out exploring, sure, somebody who's got, you know, crap gear can come along with me. Fine, totally cool.
Yeah.
Don't go, you know, playing bagpipes or whatever and alert everything in the area of our location. You know,
Right.
do move with a little bit of discretion. But otherwise, I'm totally fine having people follow me and go with me. They might see something I haven't.
What about you, Phantom? What's your ideal group?
Not the size that they're going to have.
8 people minimum, one of each class.
That just seems crazy. But
It sounds gimmicky.
I feel like 5 is a good number, but I just.
Do you prefer dungeon size party or raid size group?
I've done both. It just depends on what the outcome's going to be. My initial reaction was I would, always play with guild members or people I knew because that's easier. Back in the EverQuest days, though, going way back, majority of the difficult stuff was with a guild, right? People that you knew you could trust and you knew were going to kind of do what you were doing to prepare. At the same time, though, there were all kinds of camps. I mean, I joined those as, you're always... Before the days of, an actual automated looking for group system, you're out there just spamming chats looking for groups. So I mean, and those tended to work out okay. I mean, again, I feel like that was probably an age though where you had a smaller player base. People who were playing the game were more in tune to the game. Maybe that's why, it was kind of rare that you would ever find a camp that wasn't doing very well. And camps lasted for so long, that were so persistent that, generally you were there for an hour or two with a group. And so that, you had a time to acclimate with someone, and then someone would leave, someone would come back. To a degree, I'm okay with the automated looking for groups, I guess. But that depends, as Neuro was saying, on the difficulty. Sort of what's the reason for doing it. I don't tend to go into dungeons repetitively unless I have to for some reason.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so the gimmickiness, I just want to talk about that real quick. The idea that I'm thinking of is that you go into one of these dungeons, and then somewhere along the way, oh my gosh, there's this trap. But how are we going to solve it? Oh, I know, the rogue can disarm the trap. And then you move on a little further. Hey, there's this locked door. Oh, there's a spider over there. But if we kill it, it falls in the lava. We need the ranger to tame it and have it come over to us so we can get the key. And then, oh no, there's this boulder coming. We need our tank to use his, super-powered might to stop it, and then we can destroy it. Okay. And then, oh no, there's this, wall that we need to smash. The fighter can do his, leap attack and bust through. And there's some goblins on the other side, and they're doing this weird dance. And they don't seem hostile, but if you have the bard go and play some music with them, they'll actually open a portal for you. And then when you get on the other side, you see that the ground's been desecrated. Oh no, you need the cleric to take care of that. But when he undesecrates the ground, this horrible thing gets summoned. You need the summoner to unsummon it. And then the mage teleports you all back out to safety. Mm-hmm. Hey, it's a dungeon. You used every class one time for the gimmicks. That's what I expect it to be, is something like that. All the way across the board. And the ability to mask that with writing an event is going to be the hardest thing for them to do, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, if the whole reason for having 8 people is because every single time you're going to have to use 8 people in very different ways, that will probably be cool to start with. That will get very old very quick. And then
I don't want that myself.
I mean, in some ways it solves some things, right? So you have players, I don't know, like World of Warcraft, people who like to play the rogue, who, depending, I guess, when you play, it doesn't necessarily have might not have a big role, right? And it might not be the preferred class for a group. I'm trying to think of, Beastmaster and EverQuest, great to solo. Maybe not something people actually wanted in their group. So this is sort of a way to allow everyone to have some sort of role. But, when you have an hour to go out and play and you're trying to find 7 other people.
Yeah. I'm going to take a page out of my big unwritten book of gating discussions and mechanics and talk about the idea that the dungeon can be, instance or even semi-instance, or even you walk past a threshold and triggers activate. But it's basically, you look at the composition of the party, no matter how big it is, and you can assign the gates in each area relative to the people in the party. So if you have only 2 people going in, then your gating mechanics are going to be ones relative to the ones those classes are able to solve. You've brought a wizard who can cast fireballs. Great. There's going to be an ice wall somewhere. That's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it that way, but in doing that, you essentially don't necessarily need one of each class. It's more the novelty of, we're giving you the opportunity to feel special by using your class's special ability to, get through an area we expected you to get through.
So I would prefer when I group either in dungeons, raids, open world. I think I would always prefer to be with people I know that I can talk to, that will not be annoying to be around, that will not be rude. Because we all know that most of the people, not most, but there's a lot of basically assholes that play video games. I could go into a lot of whys, but I won't. But they just exist. So one of the things I guess that makes it okay, because really when I say automated looking for groups, the only thing that I've ever really done that with is World of Warcraft. Well, when you go into a group through the automated system, the design of it's a predictive. After you run it once or twice, you know what to expect and you know what to do. That and tends to be, well, I guess their usual pattern is initially they release a dungeon. It's very difficult. People complain it's too difficult. They make it a little bit easier, and then you can kind of walk through it all. My point being is that you can just ignore chat. There's absolutely no reason in the lower tiered sort of regular groups to even have to interact with people that you just randomly are paired with. You can see that sort of scales right to the looking for raid, where you tend to have to start kind of interacting with more people. They tend to fall apart a little bit easier. So I don't know that would actually apply here. If you have 7 other people and each person has to have a certain role, and you're going to have to interact more. So I guess I probably would not as favorably be in sort of an automated system. I just prefer to be with other people. I'm kind of like you, Diggs, though, in that this is one thing we agree on, that MMO does, multiplayer does not stand for group. It just means you're in a persistent world with other people. So I don't know that I would even necessarily group all the time, unless there was a need for it for some reason. I always try to challenge things on my own if I can, but
yeah. And so for me, one aspect of my ideal group is that I like to, if I'm going to group, I want to group with people with a similar play style. One of the first aspects of that is going to be casual versus hardcore, and I have 2 spectrums, challenge and time, and we're at a different spot now, 20 years on from when we first started playing these games, where people your age 20 years ago could be hardcore challenge players and hardcore time players. But now, 20 years later, when you have jobs and kids, you don't have necessarily a hardcore time. Even if you wanted hardcore challenge still, you don't have hardcore time to wait around for an hour at a camp just to gather everybody, or for a raid, waiting an hour for it to form, sometimes even 2 hours for it to form, and then it's going to take an hour just to make it through the raid. So you've got 3 hours. We don't necessarily have that time to play as much as we did 20 years ago. But I'm a casual challenge player, hardcore time. So I've got lots of time to play usually, but I don't want to necessarily have the most efficient gameplay. I am fashion over function, so I'm likely to be undergeared, and it's likely to be a flaw of my character to be undergeared, but I don't mind wiping a bunch of times. I like to use the people that are in my group, their abilities at wherever they are, and I like to figure out how that group can finally find a way to persevere. And if it takes wiping 5 or 10 times to do that, I'm okay with that, as long as I enjoy playing with that group. But it's typical to find myself in a group where everybody just wants to rerun the dungeon as many times, as efficiently as possible, as quickly as possible, and you don't have to talk because everybody knows what the most efficient method is, and you're just supposed to adhere to that and run through it a bunch of times. I hate being in those groups, so that's my worst type of group to be in. So finding someone who's casual play is important to me. I would prefer to be playing with other casual players. But also on the Bartle, using the Bartle score, I'm an explorer, socializer, achiever, killer, and my killer rating is 0. So I don't really care about killing the stuff in the dungeon. I care mostly about exploring the dungeon and socializing while I'm doing that. And I don't necessarily care so much about even achieving stuff within that dungeon. I just want to figure out what it looks like, maybe get some loot, maybe get some XP. But if I'm exploring and socializing, I'm pretty happy. And that does cause conflict when I'm in a group where everybody or most of the people are killer achievers first and they don't care about exploring. So ideally, I would want to find people who have a similar play style. I think one of the things that's problematic, one of the things that I always hated about raids especially, but sometimes even dungeons, is waiting around. I don't like to just wait around for an hour for the group to form, especially with raids when you finally get the last person to fill, but then it's a kid who has to go eat dinner because their parents are screaming at them. And then you've got to wait another 20 minutes for somebody to come in and fill that spot that you thought you had filled. And I see that to be a potential problem with having to fill 8 spots in a group. I don't know. That seems like it could be time consuming to get all 8 people together doing the same thing. One of each class, I guess. One of each class together. That could be more time than I want to spend.
Especially if in the same area is going to be a lot harder than, something like WoW, where you know exactly where the doors are because there's a constant train of people going to and from them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a good. I mean, if you're with large groups, I mean, I hope they plan on some sort of ease of access to play with your friends, or somehow to pop in and not have to burn 30 minutes waiting on someone to get to you.
Mm-hmm. But my hope, so one of the other things about the concept of groups within Ashes of Creation is that we have other types of groups besides just guild and party and raid. We also have the caravan attackers. We've got a group that's going to be defending, and we've got a group that's going to be attacking. And they might not be in a party together or a raid together, but they're still in groups. I mean, and that's content that you can't really do alone. In my use of the word solo, you could solo it because you don't have to be part of a party or a raid in order to participate in that. But you probably will not be doing that alone. And I do wonder how the mechanics will change for that. Will we have, what will our roles be for caravan runs that are different than in a party?
Have they said, so is that, these are things I feel like I should know, but it's been a long day. So have they said if that's an open world thing or an instance?
It's open world.
Are there only certain areas along the path where you can attack, or is it just from
there's
point
a
A
bubble
to point B?
There's a bubble around the caravan itself, and as it moves, there's a PvP bubble, and you decide whether or not you're going to defend or attack or ignore in that space.
And then they'll probably force you to be part of a group.
Force you to
be part of a group if you're in that bubble. Like auto join you to a raid or a group, I wonder.
And the same with Sieges. It might be closer. Well, that's interesting. It might be closer to the soft grouping that we had in Landmark, but I never paid attention to how many people were in my group in Landmark.
I think it was 20 was the max. Or the 20 was the most people in a proximity that would get the benefits or something like that.
Yeah, and the same thing with, I guess, sieging. That's going to be a little bit different, and it might be even different. You might have different roles for castle sieges versus node sieges. But those are the types of groups that, is a little bit different than joining a party or a raid. And I have no idea, ideally, how I want that to work. But then there's also the monster coin attack. So we have, or just NPCs and monsters attacking our nodes. And for that, we should not have to wait around to formally form a group. Like if there's 20 people online in the node at the time, we should all just be able to run up and defend the node without wasting time to try and figure out who's going to let us in their group or who we want in our group, our party or our raid. But what I'm hoping as an ideal for node defense is that because we have a community where we know where lots of the players live, we should know who's online around the same time and where they live. It should be easier to find people, the same people to group with, the people that we like to group with. It's a little different with instance housing. We might not know how to find them. But with open world housing, we should be able to get to their freehold or get to their home and hang out with them there and then go do whatever we want to do. How do you think group dynamics might be different for you in a caravan attack or a siege versus a dungeon or a raid?
Do I have to participate?
You think you're never going to participate in a siege or a caravan attack?
Or
defense?
I don't know. If I'm visiting an area and there's a siege going on, I don't know that I'm necessarily going to participate. I might just observe.
So you're thinking of playing a character that's basically acting kind of like your castles or crap shacks?
Yeah, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit, but actually having live events and stuff going on that I can observe as well. So,
right, but I mean, so you're not planning to join a node and build up a node. It's more running around exploring and seeing what's happening and reporting on what's happening in the world versus
Yep.
Okay.
And if I see a caravan being attacked and it's looks like a bunch of jerks just being bullies trying to take over and get resources, and it looks like I might actually be able to them if I join in the fight, then maybe I will. But if joining in one way or the other looks like I'm just going to be getting destroyed basically in some form or another, then I will most likely pass and just kind of record what I see and then move along.
Right. So so what are you thinking in terms of progression and even gear progression? Are you thinking you're not going to be particularly motivated to try and get the Uber gear or the legendary items from raids and dungeons?
No, not really going to have a priority for, honestly. If I need to for some reason, if my adventuring takes me to the doors of a place nobody has explored before, then I'll join the expeditionary force. And if I get some loot along the way, sweet. That's awesome. But I don't think I'm going to be going chasing that sort of stuff down. If there's solo dungeon content, then yeah, I'm sure I'll do some of that. Solo or maybe duo or whatever. But I don't think I'm going to be doing large, like 8+ people groups or even 5+ people groups. For the most part, unless I've explored and found a new area and it's, first time anybody's seeing it sort of thing, then I might go along just for the experience of seeing something for the first time, being able to report on it.
Mm-hmm. And this is a bit tangential from our topic of group gameplay, but with that in mind, are you expecting to stick to one server for that? Or do you think, it seems to me like you might end up wanting to be on multiple servers doing that, not just one server?
No, I would stick to one server.
Okay.
If people like what I do so much, but wish I did it on their server, then the door's open for them to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And what about you, Phantom? Groups? I guess there's crafting groups. You'd probably be more interested in animal husbandry and farming, I would imagine. But when you're thinking about the types of groups you would want to be in, and for different purposes, what does that look like to you for Ashes of Creation?
I mean, I won't be. I mean, I probably won't be doing caravans most likely. I guess we'll have to see. I mean, as a farmer, how much do I actually have to rely on that? So it would just be more crafting related. You're
not expecting to do castle sieges. Are you expecting to do dungeons and raids?
Yeah, and that just sort of depends. That will not be a mainstay of what I do. That's not going to be what I'm logging on every time to figure out how am I going to do this dungeon today. Or I might every once in a while sign up for a raid or something, or go help someone out, or if there's a crafting item I need. But for the most part, I just kind of be out in the open world.
Yeah, one of the other aspects of grouping that isn't ideal for me, but I haven't experienced in MMORPGs yet, is class-based groups, meaning having content where I need 4 or 5 mages or 4 or 5 rogues in order to complete the content, versus needing one of each different class. I'd love to have content where we need multiples of a class in order to succeed. So I'd love dungeons that are set up just for rogues or rangers or summoners. Those obstacles, like you were saying, Neuro, where you might have to punch through a door, maybe you need 5 fighters or 5 tanks in order to make it through that. And so that would also have some benefit with or some correlation with crafting too. That would be cool if you needed 4 blacksmiths or 4 animal husbandry people in order to accomplish some goals.
I mean, I think that would fit perfectly with castle sieges. If you're having to do repairs or whatever, actually out as you're getting ready to siege or during siege, how realistic, can one person create a catapult, or do you need, 4 or 5 people together to create that? Maybe multiple blacksmiths, that would be interesting. On a freehold, I'd hope most things would not require that, although I would be fine if there are, I have to go find a couple of people to come help me out to finish some sort of project or do something. I think that'd be fine. That'd be fun, probably, as long as it wasn't every time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because I feel like this in our other show, crafting is sort of what I'm kind of past the whole min-maxing dungeon stuff part of my life. So I sort of picture crafting as, yes, you have to obviously rely on other people, because you're not going to probably be in a Meow or a perfect setup. You would not be able to go from start, or you could, but it'd take forever to go from harvesting to refining to manufacturing to selling. So you are going to have some sort of interaction with others, which is again part of the MMO. But I see crafting as more solitary in most of the functions that you're doing as you're going through them.
Mhm. I mean, it would be nice too. I haven't really thought about when I think about the nodes that I would be a part of, um, and the community that I would want there. I'm often thinking about as an adventurer, and I know where the mage I like to play with lives, and so I'll go seek out the mage when I come online, when I log in. And the same with the fighter or the tank or the summoner. And I had thought about visiting the crafters, but I hadn't thought of as a crafter wanting to visit even other craftspeople of my profession. So, as a blacksmith, maybe I want to go check out what the other blacksmith is doing, kind of like we did with our voxel creators in Landmark. Just traveling around to see what people are doing and how they're doing it differently than what we're doing. And even, if we've got these recipes, maybe there's some benefit to trading recipes, trading blueprints. That would especially be the case in Chronicles of Illyria, probably. We should talk about that at some point. But that could also be the case, I would imagine, in Ashes of Creation. That would be really nice if that helped bring community and socializing together, that there's enough differences. One of the problems with WoW, I think, was that everybody's doing the same thing. So your crafting progression is going to be pretty much the same for anybody in your same profession. So again, there's no reason really to even have discussions about what the crafting is like, because everybody in that profession is going to craft the same stuff. But that could be really nice. Are you planning to do animal husbandry and farming if they have it in Ashes of Creation?
Yeah.
So you might want to find other people to breed with.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a chance to learn, if it involves learning new things, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think there's lots of different factors that I hope will be opening up with Ashes of Creation. A lot of the discussions that I see seem to just focus on dungeons and raids and party versus raid. But I think there's hopefully lots of different types of groups than the ones we're kind of used to from traditional MMORPGs. We have to kind of try and think outside the box of what the typical design was, because that's the beauty of Ashes of Creation and Chronicles of Illyria, is that they aren't the same design that we had with EverQuest and that we had with World of Warcraft.
Yeah. Great time to be an MMO fan, because you do have the modern EverQuest coming up in Pantheon. You still have World of Warcraft. Mm-hmm. You have Ashes. You have Illyria. I think both will be very different in how they're presented, very different player bases. So really...
And there's still Gorgon, and then there's those other MMOs. There's a lot of MMOs.
Final Fantasy is still going strong. Lots of people.
I think Black Desert's still popular.
It is probably the most popular one on Steam as far as the MMO. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there and coming
RuneScape.
out. Mm-hmm. Star Citizen, if you still are buying into that dream.
If not, Elite Dangerous.
So,
No Man's Sky VR update coming soon. Mm-hmm. It's going to be blowing your mind. Actually, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try the VR because I kind of like the idea of like actually aiming the tools and stuff, but I imagine flight's going to be pukey, so we'll see. I'll stream it.
One other little bit of news that I saw this morning on Discord was there's a game called Mordhau that has a BR, a horde mode, and a castle siege, I guess. So people are saying it's much better than Apocalypse. But I haven't looked into it too much. People are just starting to talk about it and saying, yeah, it's the game is fun, basically the same thing as Apocalypse, but other people are saying, yeah, better. So that'll be interesting to see if there's a game with the same modes of gameplay as Apocalypse. Although
Apocalypse is a latency test.
Yeah. What I like about Apocalypse, what I like about Apocalypse is getting a head start on some of the lore. So I don't really even care about the overall gameplay so much, as long as I can have fun running around, exploring and looking at stuff and seeing what they're doing.
Well, we are at the end. It's 9:00 here. So, anything else to go over? I don't think so.
No, I think we can wrap up.
Yeah, I think we had a good discussion here. And next week, of course, we'll be switching things back up, covering the events going on with, I don't know what's going to be going on. We're still waiting. But,
so maybe we'll
that's
just
the thing
go over
to bring
Game
up
of
real
Thrones.
quick is that even with Chronicles of Illyria, they've kind of pulled back on announcing times. I don't want to say deadlines, but they don't want to give dates for when they're hoping to push stuff out. And we are.
They're not going to give dates till they're sure.
Right. Which is what Ash's devs are saying too. Although it's pretty interesting that it's been about 4 months since we've really been able to play Apocalypse, which is okay. But I do wonder how that's going to affect the overall timeline for getting into alpha and beta and all that stuff. The more months that we don't have Apocalypse, it's the more months that we probably aren't going to be getting into alpha and beta.
You know what that mirrors, right?
Ooh.
We were presented with EverQuest Next.
Oh.
Landmark came out as a spin-off.
Yeah.
That kept kind of here and there, delays to combat, delays to this, delays to that. Never got back to EverQuest Next.
Well,
but I do like that they don't have it up. So I'm glad that we aren't continuing to play Apocalypse. That makes me feel better than if they were continuing. That if Apocalypse was still up 24/7 while it was broken, then they're trying to make sure that it works. Yeah. So people playing it have fun. That would be more disconcerting to me than having it down. I'm glad that they have it down.
Are they going to be at E3? I can't remember.
Ooh. PAX West is the next thing that I heard on the radar. I haven't heard about E3, but that's interesting because that's right around the corner.
Yeah. I mean, my thought was that if they own booth, they might still have like some little closed office tech demos in like the second floor area or whatever. But I don't know. I actually haven't looked. I should probably do some research there. Even if not, they might still be doing closed door stuff around that time, just because that's when the hype train's going. But who knows? We want to see the castle sieges. That's what I think everybody's waiting on at this point. So.
That's a good question for the live stream on the 31st, and hopefully we'll be having a Ashes show on the 31st after that. So we'll see if we can get that question answered.
Cool, good stuff.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We will be back next week, and everyone have a good weekend.
See you later.